So, I think most people on here are from California, and there's a bunch of new rules in place in terms of photo requirements. At a general level, I think you know what they are. They sound easy on the surface, but then actually apply. Really, how do you comply with them is not so tricky, not so easy, and um, and 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 the reality there are, I think, various versions of these rules will be going across the entire United States. That's just it's kind of happening everywhere. Some states already have various versions of these already there. So even if you're not from California, I think there's still a lot of benefit to this because it's really going to just kind of give you the options for basically handling what's your different move-in process, what's your different move-out processes, and kind of give you some choices and how we're going to go about that. Okay. So we have a pretty good chunk of time here. So please just go ahead and chat questions here as we go. Um, I think Athena and Carol may jump in on the presentation here and there, but they also will be monitoring chat. And then and we're going to try and answer every question. Okay. So, as we go, and then this will take about an hour, but then at the end, we'll stop and be here as long as people have additional questions as well. So just, kind of moving on about, most of you probably know zInspector already. We have now about 500 million pictures on our account. We've have our 10-year anniversary this year. And so we have, kind of a good chunk. We had that first month, we had 9 customers sign up, which was very exciting. And 7 of those 9 are still with us today. 2 of them retired during that time. So it's very nice to see everybody all these years and kind of get to know people and then still keep providing you the tools you need. Um, we recently presented on our new dashboard. That's kind of our new website. So we're going to be referencing that here and there. That's still a work in progress. There's a lot there. You're going to do a lot with it. There are many new elements of it that are still getting worked on. But there in this presentation and on our website, there'll be a link to that. So if you want to see that kind of dashboard presentation, kind of just covering the new website and what it's doing for you, it's good to look at that here as well. But we're going to be kind of diving into this now, just kind of like, some housekeeping. I'm not a lawyer. Okay. So I am a licensed broker in California. I've personally been a property manager doing many, many thousands of move out inspections and now, providing software to really millions of people doing, move out inspections, but I'm not an attorney. And at the end of the day, what we're really not trying to do is like, I'm not going to say this is how to do it because there are different ways, there are different solutions, and you have to figure out what's the best way for you to approach it for your business. And so we're going to try and outline what those different options are, and then you can kind of choose what's the right way for you to approach these problems. Okay. And so that's really our goal. At the end of the day, you're all experts in the industry. You're all basically licensed managers, and you kind of are the best ones to interpret how these are going to apply to applicable laws. Now, in terms of this presentation, um, the first kind of handful of slides are just going to be a little bit about zInspector for long-term users. That will be perhaps a little bit of redundant. And I'm going to go through those pretty fast. It's not about to show, I'm not trying to show what zInspector does, but I'm just doing that to get some of our terms out there because when we're actually going to talk about specifically in the California compliance, we'll be referencing some of those terms. So we want to kind of understand some of those terms and how we apply them. The reality is you could use these tools without zInspector at all in terms of what we're covering, how to approach this, right? So briefly covering these tools will be helpful. And so we'll talk about our zInspector app, media tagging, PDFs, area level media, what that means, our zTenant app. We have tenant moving capability, tenant inspections, or you can invite them to any template you want. Our multi-tenant feature, We got a remote signature feature, and we got Z Assistant. Okay, so these are some of the core things you're gonna kind of blow through, and just kind of, most people have some type of thing like built into Appfolio or Rentmine or Rent Manager, whatever you're using, but they come to us because one, we work great without internet, but really our native like camera experience. We're really the only ones where you can like get a wide angle lens, get all three walls at once. All these types of very advanced kind of memory management features. I don't want my dirty bathroom pictures mixed in with my vacation pictures. Those types of things we're just going to solve for you. Okay, so that's really kind of how we started. And a big thing of how we started was just media tagging. And just last week we presented at the PM University a new workshop it's putting on, and I think that YouTube video is available, I believe. And if it's not, we can link it to you. And it actually is a good real examples of like why you need time stamping and GPS stamping, and how that actually got used, where I actually had to use those things in court, right? So this was kind of before. We've always had time stamping and GPS stamping. That's been here for 10 years, and it's because of actually needing those features in court, kind of where that kind of came about. And so, so we've always had those features, and that's kind of important. We also have this kind of, I think a lot of people don't know this feature on our reports. You open the report on the website, in the lower right there, you can do a report arrow, and there's a high resolution option. And this one you can download where every picture goes full screen. Okay. And so those times where you need to, and you can unselect certain pictures if you don't want those there or whatnot, where every single picture will print out full screen, but then still with the GPS coordinates and time stamping and things like that in the footer. Okay. So like those once in a while, if you need to, for legal documentation, you do that, then, you have that. So it's kind of good to know that that's there. And then this here on the left, this is what we call our condition table. Okay, so that's our main thing. And it's different than like other software where you're kind of making a template. The idea is our templates are based on your process, move in, move out, but it dynamically changes based on the condition table for that property. So every property can have its own unique list of areas. Now, all going to be set up by default, right? So like in this kind of little cropped view here, I've got entry and kitchen, right? Those are what we call areas. That's our term for areas. And within areas, if you expand it, that's what we call details. Cabinet, counter, things like that. You can, of course, customize that list to be whatever you want, but that list is actually based very similarly after the classic California MIMO list, right? So that's kind of came from like, was a broker, and that's what I knew we needed, right? So that's kind of where it came from, but you can make it be whatever you want very easily and change it, even though it's set up by default. And then this area level media, we didn't actually have this when we first started. When we first started, you just take a picture on each item, but it was requested a number of years back. And you can take pictures, these AIs, the assistant videos, or these 360 image. And if you take pictures on these icons here, that would be just stored with kitchen, right? Or if you use those icons there, it'd be just stored with entry. So that's what we're going to call area level media, okay? As opposed to if you use a camera button down here, then that's going to be tagged with kitchen counter, okay? So these are terms that we're kind of doing now. We also have a feature called area summary table. That's the name of the actual table. And then the default template on accounts is called property unit walkthrough template. You can, of course, make that be whatever you want. And that just has the areas, and then you can kind of free form comments on that. I think that was really designed for people who wanted a simplified list for doing periodic inspections. But I know there's some people using that for like move-in inspections, for example. So so I'm just kind of covering them both here to make sure you kind of understand the difference between the condition table, the breakdown list of all of our details, as well as just kind of this area only table. All right. And then we also got these, we support 360 cameras. And, we're sometimes doing 50,000 360 images a day. So there's a lot of 360 images. And then that'll be on the PDF report. Okay. But then with a link for, say, 360 viewer, and those are where you can kind of, go all the way around and see everything. Okay. And so that's what we're calling our, it's kind of 360 media. So it's good to know about those. You can also do video at the area level as well. All right. Now, and then next, we also have can do their own inspections. There's a lot here. Okay, so there's all kinds of options. You can on this Z-Tenant app, when they're done doing an inspection, it'll actually kind of customize to be what your own link, so you can easily make it be whatever you want. Call us. Like maybe you want to submit a maintenance ticket through Property Melds or pay rent through Rentvine or Appfolio or Rent Tech Direct or whatever that is. You could add that different link in here or anything else that you want. Okay. And so it becomes kind of your own app. You change the logo, you change the color scheme, all that. It's just kind of, so it's kind of a fun thing to do. So that's nice. And if you're and different people are using this in different ways. Some people are having tenants do a move-in inspection. You could also have them do anything that you want, like a renewal inspection, periodic inspection, whatever you want. And it has everything in there for the auto expiration, daily reminders, all those things. All right. And then this feature got launched a few months back, kind of officially turned on. So when tenants are doing inspections, it's going to invite all tenants on the lease at once. Okay. So this is even if you have like, 4 tenants in a home, they are all getting an invitation. They're all seeing each other's things back and time. So they're all inspecting on their own device. And at the bottom of their screen, they can see if their roommates logged in or not, if they completed it or not, if they do comments to each other. They're all seeing each other's stuff back and forth. Okay. So, and they can see each other's photos back and forth. So one takes a photo, the other one sees it. And then they're all signing one document. Okay. That's at the end. They're all just kind of completing one document. So that's kind of for tenants doing their own inspection. So that's what tends to do their own inspections. And then we have another tool called remote signature. And that's essentially like basically you could think of it like DocuSign or something where you're sending it a document to them, but it's much more interactive with other options. And so, for example, this one is like required in certain countries, like in Australia for sure, some parts of Canada. And I'm pretty sure, like, I know a lot of our Washington customers use this as well. And where the property manager first does an inspection, okay, and then that puts the property manager's comments here. But if you let the tenants add comments to the condition table right here, it'll another column up on your inspection. They can't change your comments, but it'll add a column there and it'll let the tenants add their own comments to that. So you would still get kind of one report with both sets of comments, and you can choose to have that column. The one here, tenants add comments, that one is just a single comment field at the bottom. This is a single comment field at the bottom. This one is a comment field all the way down. Okay, so that's our remote signature feature. And that also supports multiple tenants as well. Okay, so keep that in mind. Right, so and got to talk about Z Assistant here because it is, I think, useful in this context. And you now just walk and talk. If you haven't tried it, it's super cool. You just walk and talk, and it's using AI to basically write your whole inspection report automatically, actually storing individual photos. It's taking AI, combine your comments. You could have multiple users, multiple devices, each walking and talking, and AI will combine all that into a single inspection report. And the process was really thought through, so you know exactly if AI generated or not. Did you review it or not? And so that is really getting a lot of use. So you want to be aware of that feature as well. Okay, so that's kind of like the intro on tech tools. Okay, so it's on tech tools, kind of the basics, and now we're going to kind of start getting into really why you are here, and we've got some of that kind of frame of reference under here. Okay, so and this here is let's talk about California compliance, and before we kind of dive into it, like you to think kind of pre this law change. Okay. And so pre this law change, we want to take a little poll here on what was your move in process. Okay. So I'm calling this classic, and that is like if PMs are doing an inspection and sometimes they might even get a signature on site, or sometimes they would just simply email the report off. It was more just about them documenting it, or sometimes they're like not doing it at all, but it was really more the PMs doing an inspection for their own documentation purposes. Um, and then others where maybe the PM does the inspection and they're sending it to for remote signature and having the tenant sign it. Okay. And then the next one is the tenant doing a move in, and whether you're inviting them on an app, the tenant app to do a move-in inspection, whether you're giving them a paper checklist, anything like that. Okay, maybe you're doing some type of hybrid, some combination of this, or maybe you're doing something else. So, like, kind of think back pre this law change, and let's see what people's kind of move-in process was. And if you kind of start that kind of poll here, and let's see where people kind of are going here. Okay.
Yes, I just launched that. We'll quite a few answers here. That's perfect.
Yeah. So they're all coming in, and you know, and it's really interesting. Like, I don't know, can everyone see these results that are coming? They're probably not yet. No.
Oh, I thought everybody could
Pro-
see that.
No, I think they can't see them until we end it, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah, which may probably make sense. Yeah, so let's try and give it another kind of
It's a tie, almost.
20 seconds. Yeah, yeah, but don't jinx it.
Oh, sorry.
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of move-ins are always like it's interesting to hear people how they do them. Okay, we'll give it a few more seconds. If someone really wants more time to finish, you can also throw something in chat and we'll wait a little longer, but that's probably going to be good enough. We got a great set of respondents, so I'm going to end this poll. Okay, and here we'll hit share results. Okay, and then I think this is really like um very interesting. Okay, is that it's a pretty big mixture, right? And I think it was one of those things that when I got into this space, thought property managers all did it my way, and it wasn't until I realized that I knew it in my little town, my little market, and everybody is really they're kind of optimizing it. I would not be surprised here if we really dove into this, if there's different segments. I've kind of learned over time, like the people managing apartments, they do it one way. People managing homes do it another way. If people are more likely to do like a in-person showing, they're doing it one way. If they're more likely to have a self showing, they're doing it another way. So I would not be surprised if there's a lot of kind of separations in this. Okay, and so like so I think this was already kind of instrumental in this, and let's kind of like keep going on here. Okay, so and all right, and so let's get into now what this law says. Okay. And like everything now, let's might as well ask Chat GPT. Okay. And so I think we're all using AI at some level. I'm just going to make sure we disclose it. And so we're knowing where it's right and where it's not. And so now my question there was beyond that, because I have a full chat going on here. There's other stuff around this, right? So my last chat was, hey, briefly summarize the new photo requirement rules. And this is what Chat GPT did. Okay. And it was actually, I thought, pretty good. Okay. So, basically it's the on a move out. Okay. You need to take, and this is really new in the laws. You got to take pictures basically before the repairs are cleaning and then after the repairs are cleaning. Okay. So, all right. What does that all mean? And so then we got to do this post repair kind of cleaning photos, and then here with move in, okay, that that these move in photos, they become the baseline. That's really kind of the key. Is that a property manager has this kind of baseline photo requirement, right? So that's kind of like how ChatGPT uses this law. But okay, so that's nice. But how do I actually do that? Okay, so if you're doing a lot of this in volume, that's what we're trying to talk about, right? That's easier. It's one thing to say the requirement, but I'm actually satisfying this requirement in volume is not easy. Now, this here we're going to keep just for reference. It's just kind of some of the legal references, links to the law and stuff like that. So it's here available. Um, but let's do another poll. Okay. And that is, I would say, is do tenant completed move-ins independently satisfy this part of the law? Okay. And so this is just talking about the move-in inspection. And then we can say, can we just basically let the tenants, do this? And so let's go ahead and start that other poll. Okay. And let's see where we go on this. Okay. Yeah, and I think it's interesting because different property managers have always kind of looked at this tenant completed move-ins as, they love it or hate it, it's core to their business or not, and so forth, right? And so what I think it's really important to kind of assess this question and kind of rather than me or us here kind of really specifically telling you, I think it's going to get some really unique insights here when we got a bunch of professionals in the industry kind of summarizing it. Okay. And we got a pretty good chunk there. And let's go ahead and end this poll. Okay. And share these results. Okay. And so we got here, 22% say yes, 78% say no. And, and for like in my property management business I ran a long time, this is exactly how we operated, right? For years, it was it was really the tenant's responsibility for documenting kind of potential damages at move-in. And so 78% of you said we probably can't really rely on the tenant really doing that anymore. We got to do something else. The way I'm interpreting this law, which is very problematic, kind of how it used to be is you had to prove guilt, right? So if someone damaged something, you took a photo showing the photo of the damage. You're proving a damage, right? So you would have a documentation of the damage item. But this could be interpreted very, very strictly. You're almost having to, I would kind of prove innocence of some you have to prove exactly what the property was ahead of time. If you didn't, then you might not be able to hold out for damages at move out. Okay. So so that's kind of really keep that in mind here is how we're interpreting this. Okay. So let's kind of keep going here. So what if we said, all right, 78% of you said, I probably can't just rely on the tenants, for their movement. What if I wanted to do kind of a combo and say, I'm going to have tenants still do their own move-in. I'm going to invite them to do their own move-in. All the tenants have a right to take pictures. They can do all that. But I'm going to just have the PM kind of doing kind of a more quicker inspection and taking area level 360s or videos of every room. So I'm going to put and go ahead and start that poll, Athena. And so the idea is that I'm going to, at least have my inspector and if once you're good at that, you can do that in 10, 15, 20 minutes. Okay. And you're kind of going in there and saying, I got a 360 in every single room. I always recommend if you're doing that like in a kitchen or something like that, take one with the doors open, one with the doors closed, right? So the oven open, oven closed, things like that. Plus you've got here all kind of your, the tenant can document other kind of further damage. Okay? So let's kind of give a few more minutes here to let people kind of give their opinion on this one. Because I think things like this are really important because it's going to change how you do your business. So let's see what everyone's opinion is on this. And so I think that's probably a good number to get a good representation of what's going on. And so I'm gonna kind of share these results. 72% of you think that is probably satisfactory. Okay. 28% of you are saying no, that's not. Okay. And so I think it's kind of a good example. Uh, I think it's in my interpretation from if I was doing it, I would think that it kind of does satisfy it, but it probably does leave some more room for error. Probably, maybe I didn't really cover something that I was supposed to, or something like that. So I think it very may well cover it, but I think it's also a possibility that I would more likely have an error, or my staff member would have an error, right? So that's kind of it's kind of a good thing right there to kind of assess this. All right, now let's kind of keep going on. So if we look at the law, okay, changes, and if you look at all these summaries, what people are writing, okay, all they're talking about is the move in, the move out, and the post completion. Okay, so that's nice, right? That's great. But as property managers in California, we know there's a lot more to it than that. And this is, if you've ever been to court for security deposit disputes, okay, one of the first thing, not every judge will do this, okay, but I've had judges do it myself. The first thing I'll ask is, did you do a pre-inspection? And I remember I got asked that, and the judge didn't ask me, did I offer the tenants to do a pre-inspection? Did I do a pre-inspection? Okay. And so what a pre-inspection is if you're, most people here from California, so but if you are, and when we first rolled out the term pre-inspection, zInspector, it created all kinds of confusion because people are taking pre-inspection in other states as in other states do what's called a make ready inspection, where they kind of do an inspection prior to move in to make it ready. And that's, and so they were kind of interpreting that word as that. But pre-inspection in the California language is a pre-move out inspection. And this is where you kind of offer that to the tenants. There are certain day requirements and things like that when you have to do it. I'm not going to go through all that here. You're California, so you know those rules. But it's really then it gives the tenant a chance to say, hey, there's an issue here. Are you going to charge me for this or not? Can I have time to fix it or not? Right. So, and so that there's a whole loaded thing on here. Do you do them or not? And you can get kind of real complicated real fast. I always liked doing them as a property manager, mainly because I found it really useful to do them and give insight into your owners ahead of time. So, like, you can walk through and go, yeah, this place is trash. I'm going to need to paint or new flooring or whatever that is, and give them some heads up. So, I always thought they were very useful from that perspective, anyways, from my own kind of more selfish perspective. But it's also useful then for the tenants. You have to at least give them that option. Okay. And then, similarly, um, the law changes that people are talking about, move in, move out, or post completion. I haven't seen any people who are summarizing that, really just kind of saying that the tenant still needs an opportunity to identify issues of their. And I do think you still need to provide that opportunity somehow to tenants, right? Because you may have missed something. You may, sometimes photos don't cover everything, right? Maybe, so there's all kinds of little subtle examples where we can go into that, but, I had one I actually turned on the ceiling fan, verified that it worked. I just quickly turned on, started spinning, turned it off. But then, and the place was spotless, but then the tenant called up and said it was filthy. And what happened when they actually got the ceiling fan going, it was all dirty on the top. The cleaner missed the top of the ceiling fan, sprayed dirt everywhere, all over the house, And so and it's like, so there are things like that kind of like come up. And so I still think you need the way to give tenants a way to identify move-ins. So when it really comes into it, it's not just these three things that are really kind of everyone's talking about, and most of the working groups and things like that. I really have four core requirements for our photo documentation. And this is just regarding tenant security deposits. Okay. So you need to be having all five of these things in mind, even though some of them may technically be optional or not. And so that's what we're putting in here. I got my move-in photos. I think those are required. I got tenant documentation photos. I think optional, but probably. And this was a Chat GPT summary. When I kind of probe back with my questions, I got to worry about this and this. This is how it kind of came back with my summary. Okay, and then I got to do pre-move out photos. Okay, I got to do my move out photos and I got my resolution photos. So I really got 5 different points of documentation that I got to worry about. But how am I going to do all that? So, and I think these are some of the questions to think about. Like, now, practically ask ourselves, we got our 5 requirements and say, all right, how do I make sure my staff is taking the necessary photos? Okay. So that is its own kind of challenge. What about tenant complete inspections? Can this kind of flow into that? Um, what role does area level media kind of satisfy? Okay. And how do I actually visualize, let's say, 4 to 5 sets of photos in one view? And so I think, like, from a practical side, these are kind of some core questions that every property manager needs to kind of assess how these are going to work in your business. All right, so let's kind of keep going here, and before we open up this poll, I'm going to kind of talk about what we're thinking are kind of sample move-in flows. Okay, and so based now on the new law changes, based on our polling here and things like this, what do you think your move-in flow should be? And let's say your dominant move-in flow. Maybe you have different ones in different situations, but let's say your dominant move-in flow. I would say option 1 is essentially the PM does the move in. Okay, essentially you're doing the move in, and then you're basically the tenant is there with you. They're signing on your app, or you're sending that for remote signature and then the tenant's getting a copy. So I would say this qualifies, right? You have the move-in photos, you're getting a baseline type pictures, right? You're giving the tenant the opportunity to provide feedback, identify issues, and then they're get a copy of that. Okay, so that is like one workflow. Another option would be you're inviting the tenant to do their own move-in. The tenant does a move-in, they can do their own documentation, okay? But you're gonna at least have PM primarily do, I would say primarily area only media, all right? So you're trying to do a quick inspection. You're trying to and you might do this maybe before you invite the tenant or, so forth. Maybe, there's some other subtleties on that, but you're primarily doing area only media. And then the tenant, in this case, they're automatically get a copy of this, and you probably would also want to also email them a copy of that. And then I would say, I know some property managers, they do both. They have the PM do a move in and they have the tenant do a move in, a full move in. And I know some people really like that option. That's what they want. For me personally, I don't really like it because I got you know, 2 different documents. What is my source of truth? How do I reconcile them? Which one am I comparing? On a move-in, what's out, which am I comparing against? Right? What if there's big discrepancies in there? What's my process to resolving those discrepancies? But that said, there are many PMs that's their preferred approach. And so I think that's worth doing there, and it may be a very thorough one. And then and maybe there's something else that we're just not thinking. So let's open up this poll here. Like, based on some of these law changes and this app, which one of these do you think is going to be your move and flow? Well, I think it's already a great assortment. I think it's really interesting results. And let's kind of share this, right, and share these results. And I don't know. I think if you'd asked me that, I don't know if I would have predicted that, to be honest. It's kind of so. I think it's interesting. There's definitely a mix of all. I think there. I think this one is interesting right here, where tenant does a move in PM captures area level media. I think it's interesting that got such a low percentage, even though about 80% of you said that you thought that would meet the requirements. It sounds like only about 11% of you will probably do it this way. And I think what this is really saying here is that, 87% of you, whether it's this option or this option, kind of PM does the move in or both PM and 10 does the move in, it's really basically 87% of you are really going to have PMs do a full move in inspection. Okay. So that's kind of what you're interpreting, that, for the most part. And that's interesting because I've, had some kind of, conversations with PMs at some conferences and others. Some are not doing that. So that is interesting, kind of how that's being interpreted in terms of this choice. Okay. All right. So let's kind of keep going here. All right. Now, this is, I would say, a little subset of option one. And it's important for you to know this. Some people are shocked that this idea even exists, but like if you manage, let's say, 5,000 square foot homes, really big homes or something like that, you may get a property that the place looks great after the move out. Okay. Um, and you might have 1,000 pictures, 2,000 pictures. And so we do have a feature where you can have the PM does a move out on the website. You can basically copy it. It creates a tenant move in. It attaches the move out pictures. Okay. And then you can send that to the tenants for remote signature. Okay. And a copy you can email to all tenants. So I would take that as a kind of a subset of option one for certain people that are looking at that option. Okay. All right. So let's kind of keep going on. Now, let's talk about pre-inspections. This slide is a little complicated, so try and ignore that. Let's just open up this poll here, Athena. And so, who should do a pre move out inspection? Okay, should the PM do it or the tenant do it? Okay, and so and this is, so this would be saying, like, if the PM did it, you may send them an email saying, hey, you would like to do a um a pre move out inspection. If they say yes, then the PM, they're going to go on site, do it with the tenant. Okay. Um, or some other people are having tenants do this kind of pre move out inspection, and they just send that kind of invitation out to every tenant with their lease expiring, and it kind of walks them through everything to look for: wear and tear, tenant responsibility, existing damage. It's got to get, our default template has a bunch of kind of cleaning requirements and kind of recommendations. You can change that to be whatever you want. Okay. So let's kind of, so there's kind of different versions of that on here. Well, this one was pretty lopsided, to be honest, and also more than what I thought, to be honest.
I was a little
And
surprised too.
yeah, so this is like 90% are basically saying the PM should do the pre-move out inspection. And I think it makes sense, that from a general like diligence point of view, I think it's a great thing to do, and maybe my mindset comes from, you know, we kind of, when I was really working in property management, we would turn basically all homes at the same time in kind of a seasonal town. So like it was just like you had to kind of do a little bit more things in bulk, where if you're having them kind of turn throughout the year, it might be a little bit different. But this is saying pretty kind of universally that the PMs here should do a pre-move out inspection. Now, I do think there might be still room for interpretation on this. I know, like, I kind of look in California, it kind of stuck around since COVID. You can still get alcohol to go, so I think it's like one of those things that if you have the right process, it may still work. But I think that you're right. The best would be certainly to have a PM go at all times on this one, and that's clearly what this is showing here as well. All right, let's keep going on here. Okay, so now we talked about, we're going through this whole life cycle. We talked about the move-in inspection. We talked about kind of coming up with a process to give tenants the right to kind of document things. We've talked about our pre-move out inspection, and now, okay, we're going to do the move out inspection. Okay. And then how are we going to do kind of post compliance? Okay. From that. All right. So this would be kind of an example where I've got different issues. And if you're not familiar with zInspector, there's a difference between damage items. That's the default setup as a D for it's a tenant damage it. It's and it's really a financial damage as opposed to a physical damage. And it really is their responsibility or likely their responsibility. And then here I separately have an action, like I'm actually going to hire a vendor, okay, to kind of go out and fix that item, right? So like in this example up here, kind of long-term water damage, I did not think it was really the tenant's responsibility for various reasons. I rated it in poor condition, but I assigned an action. Here, missing bulb, I assigned it the tenant's responsibility. I'm also going to trigger a vendor. There's a cracked mirror. I'm going to charge a tenant for that. I'm going to assign a vendor. Okay. So that would be kind of a move out example. Okay. But like, how do I actually get those pictures? Okay. And that's really, I think, the key. And, um, and so I think one that we should try to say is, can we use our move in for post move out compliance? Okay. And so that's one. Now, I think the problem with that is our default setup this is how we've done it for many years, is that when you do the move in, this is what it would look like. Now, we've always kind of showed the result, right? So we kind of do it like this. P for poor. So you can kind of see here, I can see the old comment. I can see all this. I can see it was damaged. So I could use this, but there wasn't actually a requirement to go take photos, right? So the idea was, for the most part, the original thought process is we do a move out inspection. We generate the list of repair work and all that stuff. We go and do the work. Okay, and then we do a move-in inspection. Ideally there, it's all satisfactory and it's all checked off, all satisfactory. Okay, and that was kind of how that came about. So you had it here for reference, but it wasn't actually, you didn't have to go take your photo anymore. And so I think that kind of creates some problems in this post compliance type situation. Okay. And so this is kind of that example again. And so these are a couple of new features that we have launched. And one of them is you can now force area level media. Okay. And we can also force a last inspection force. Okay. And so I'm going to cover those example ones here. Now, on this force area level media one, we have essentially always done it. If you invite tenants to do a move-in inspection, they were forced to take at least one picture per room. They could mark the rest of the room as all satisfactory, but they were forced to take at least one picture per room. Okay, so that's kind of how that's always been there. But we've now kind of added that kind of item here kind of throughout. And so like, if I have those two options on and I started the move-in inspection, this is what it would now look like. Okay. So, and Athena, you can see my mouse moving on the screen, correct? Yeah. Okay. All right. So anything that's red in here is required. So I'm forced to take at least one area level media item, like a photo or video or 360 image. Okay. Plus, because these items were damaged, okay, I'm forced to take a picture here and forced to take a picture here no matter what. Okay. Normally, to date, we've only forced you to take a picture by default if something was marked as damaged or if something was marked as action required on this particular inspection. But now you can actually have it trigger these items based on kind of this kind of last inspection here. And if you're doing a move out, it can force that from your last move in. That's kind of basically how it's set up. All right. So how that will work then in the actual inspection, let's say the place is perfect. Okay, it's all great. So I have the check mark and it's all here and I marked everything as satisfactory. I still had to take at least one picture here. So I see my counter there. I have to have at least one picture here to get rid of that red camera here and at least one picture here. Okay. So that's what these new options will kind of require you to do here. All right. Now we've got here some other kind of things to kind of go through. And so what we have now, we've always had a move in, move out comparison feature. Okay, so you can still do that. You can pick any two inspections and put them side by side. Okay, but this is really a photo requirement kind of rules now. Okay, and so now I need to kind of like, the idea was pick my move out, but maybe I need to pick photos from 4 or 5 other inspections. Like, so maybe I need to pick them. I'm doing my move out, but I want to maybe attach photos from my move-in inspection, from my tenant completed move-in inspection, from my pre-move out inspection, and from my move out my upcoming move-in inspection where I just did the compliance. I need to be able to attach all of those photos now from 5 different things. Okay. So how we did this now, to do that feature, you'll have to access it from the new website. Okay. And there are some things that are happening on this, but let's kind of go into that. So what I was going to do is click the properties here. I'm going to, I have this little kind of simple bathroom test property that I'm just doing this as an example. So I pick that property. And then under documents here, I have all of my different documents. Okay, now this is not the really best example, but they're here like a day apart. Clearly, that's not exactly right. Obviously, I just did this here, but I have a move-in inspection. Let's imagine from a year ago. I just did my move-out inspection, and now I have a new incoming tenant that just moved in. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is click my move. So I'm going to click the move out and I'm going to see all the pictures, here. And we have all kinds of cool stuff on this now. This is this new kind of side panel. I can open it, close it. Okay. And this is also totally shareable, remotely. Or so I have this public share button here. So I could email it to somebody, or I could just kind of copy this link and send that out. Okay, so this is like a shareable type thing where they can kind of interact here with it. Okay. And then, but you as the PM have all kinds of settings here. You got various kind of export options here. You've got kind of more advanced settings here. Okay. And then, but here I'm going to show my media panel. And now we have some new media options here. Okay. So if I click settings, and these are different options where under display options, I can choose in the summary table on or off, right? These options have been there a long time, but they're just now in this view. But now if I click media attachment, okay, we have these options here. So these top ones here, those are the options that have always been there where you basically could just attach media from other inspection, but it was more by time. Okay. So like you could like pick recent photos and attach them from other inspections. So the doc ID means it was the photos were taken with that specific inspection. If I just had non-doc ID, it would just grab any photos from any inspection within 7 days. Okay, so these are how the span features have always worked to date. But now you can specifically go here and pick different documents. Okay, and you can actually pick a number of documents. Okay, and pick those there. So I'm going to pick the document. And again, I could pick a series of documents and those are now going to show up there. But what's really kind of neat here is that, so like I have both my area level media. So in my bathroom at the top, I've got my area level media, move out and move in. If I had area level media from a tenant move in and I picked that, that would also show up there as an option, for example. Okay, so all those different media will be there with the actual inspection right there, kind of separating it. So this was my bathroom level top media for these different inspections. Similarly, okay, um, here I've got my light fixture and, and I've got my comment, there's a missing bulb. But when I actually did my move in picture, it was resolved and I've got it here. There's my move in picture and I can see kind of here it's resolved. So this is there now where you can kind of already pick kind of any series. There's a couple of little updates that kind of make this practical that are going to be coming in the next kind of 2 to 4 weeks, somewhere in there. One of them, and kind of even in prepping for this kind of, this workshop, um, the specific date of that inspection will be right there. Okay, so we're going to have that clearly right there for the date, because this is kind of technically the date of the photo, which is a little bit different. But we're going to have the date of the inspection right there, and then the real key is that even though this was a move out and this was a move in, what you're going to be able to do is override this title right from this document. So you're going to be able to, so if you have future move-in photos, you would just be able to uh, select that move-in report, and then basically in this media attachment, when you're doing this in this process, you'll be able to change the display title of this move-in. So right here, it'll say something like work complete or something like that. And that's just going to be sticky on this inspection. It's not actually changing the move-in. The inspection that you did is just changing how those photos are going to display here. Okay. So that particular element is going to be coming in the next kind of 2 to 4 weeks, but it's in the short term. But you can already kind of pick these different photos and show them there and see that and start to see how this already works. All right. So that's kind of, some loaded stuff that I'm throwing it out there. And if there's any questions or anything like that, please ask them here as we go. I'm just going to kind of keep going on here, and then we can come back to that kind of as needed. Okay, so this is kind of like my wrapped up summary here. Like, design your process, okay? And what is your process? So here I got, move in. PM does the move in and move in. Tenant signs in, personal remote signature. Um, Tenant does move in. PM area takes level media. Clearly, we should have on this here option 3, based on, I think it was almost 50% of the people said that they're going to have option 3 on this one, that the tenant does the move in and the PM does a full move in. Okay, so that's kind of one to keep in mind there. Then we've got here this pre-move out one. You got to make that decision. Sounds like, it's kind of pretty, sorry, kind of clicked off there. About 90% of people are going to have a PM doing one here. And now, then I think, you got to decide on this move in, okay? What are you going to do for this? Are you going to primarily like try and leverage your move in for compliance? Or are you going to use a dedicated work completion compliance inspection? And so that is also very possible. Some people may want to do, and this term is very common throughout, I would say, the Midwest. We see that term a lot. They just call it a make ready. So they do a move out, they do a make ready where they kind of make sure it's ready, and then they kind of do a move in, right? So I think it kind of depends on your market, how you're doing turns or so forth, whether you want that to be a dedicated inspection or whether you really want to just essentially leverage your exact move-in inspection for those. Okay. Someone says chat is disabled. Athena, could you take a look at that and see?
So chat should be enabled for everyone.
Yeah.
They now have Zoom now has different tabs, again in the chat too. So when you open the chat at the top, you should see like an everyone icon, and you should be able to access that. Anybody should be able to access that.
And if for some reason that's not, you can send us a direct message or something like that, and then we'll respond to that too here. Okay. Now this is kind of just like so these are, I think these are the things that you need to map out kind of from your business. How, how are you going to approach this? And now kind of like so some of the more technical things in our software from we've always had these photo force requirement options by default. Some people have turned these off, so that's also possible. If a detail was marked as damaged, it'd force a picture. If a detail required an action, it would force a picture. But these two now are not on by default. Force area level media, that's not on by default. Force photo if damaged from last inspection, that's not on by default. Okay. So if you want those on by default, when we send this out, we'll make sure we send links on how to do that. And you can always just email support and you're like, hey, on this template, I want those enabled, and we will do that for you. And then we'll show you what you did, email you back the instructions on how to do it. It's very straightforward once you know where to click, but those are options to know about. Okay. Now, this thing here will be coming here in the next kind of few weeks, where you can change the report display name in a media attachment. So I think that's going to be relevant when you are really picking from 5 different inspections. You got the move in, a tenant move in, a pre-inspection, a move out, an upcoming move in, and then you're going to, and you want to just kind of quickly change the display title to be something custom just for you. Easy to do that. That's coming here in the next few weeks. We've been asked for this feature for years, and I really didn't like this feature. Okay, so we've never done it, but we are going to add this one here shortly. And that is, you're going to be able to force a picture automatically of every detail. Okay, and so up until now, we had damage. And then you could also in a template put a forcing requirement for item by item. So you could like say, hey, I want to force a picture for my refrigerators. I want to force a picture for under the sink. I want to force a picture of this. It would be had to be modified this way. But we're also, going to add an option where you can quickly force a picture of just every single item. And I'm really, not sure, like, I was never really sure, is that really the mode that we wanted? It's kind of a little bit of a challenge, I would say, because it's kind of just adding a lot of overhead for your inspectors. However, with the new Z Assistant feature, okay, that is easier than ever. Okay. And I think that's part of why I'm like kind of more open to open that feature up now. And so you can really just talk through inspections. And if you haven't tried out Z Assistant, just in the last couple weeks, launched a bunch of important updates. And so now you're going to see when you're in a room, kind of taking a video, you're going to see the list of details right there in the and there. When you kind of are moving over an item, you'll get this, your little Z Assistant character will kind of do a little flash when it's capturing a picture. Okay. And so you just basically pause an item, it's going to capture a picture. And then as you're talking about an item, it's going to kind of do a real time. It's literally just saying, hey, this flooring is really dirty. We need a cleaner. You're going to see it kind of illuminate right there. Okay. And you get this kind of real time checklist. So I think to really cover every single item, it's very practical. And we've put a lot of time into what we call chunk uploading. So we're doing all this kind of AI processing in batches. And so now the results are coming back in here very quickly. Okay. They're streaming back in here. And so you're going to see all these results basically real time as you're taking them, and high quality pictures. Okay. So I think it's going to if you want, especially if you're going to turn this option on to force a picture of every room, you really want to be looking at Z Assistant because it's going to speed that way up. All right. Now, So we've got a kind of series of webinars here. We've got a new webinar on kind of like inspection scheduling, our new process building. So if you want to kind of build a process around managing inspections, maybe you want one person reviewing them and one person scheduling them or something like that, we're going to be talking about that. We've got so you can register for that webinar here very shortly. You can always do as many kind of one-on-one demo training sessions as you want. It says one-on-one, but you can invite people from your team, as many people from your team. Our Facebook user group has now 500 members, basically. So it's lots of stuff is going on there. So please join that. And then you can email us here at any time. And then I'm going to throw Carol under the bus right now. So if you're going to NARPM, we're having a what night is our happy hour? Might as well tell this group right here. Yes.
It is October 22nd, 6 to 8 p.m.
Perfect.
And
We're
sending out an email to everyone as well.
so sign up for that. If you're coming to the NARP manual, we're going to be co-hosting an event with on-site pros. And so I hope to see you, some of you in person, if you're at that NARP conference. I hope this was helpful in kind of giving you some of the key decision points on how to approach this interesting kind of California compliance rule. So thank you so much for coming today.